Welcome everyone, and today's session is on R4i Writer. This is on our new release, version 3, and all of the new features that are available in this release, including the new simplified technical English module that's an option now available. So today's session should run for approximately 45 minutes, and there'll be some times for questions at the end. And but of course, if you do have any questions in between, don't hesitate to pop your hand up via the panel, type those questions into the panel, and you can minimise that panel to put it out of the way if it's in the way of the presentation today. It'll go down into a little panel that has that orange icon on it, and you can click that again if you do need to bring it back up on screen. We are recording today's session, and if you also feel the need to ask any questions after the end of the session today as well, then don't hesitate to do that. There will be a quick pop-up that will come up on your screen at the end of today's session for requesting any more information as well. Okay, some other housekeeping items. So a little bit of a background on OneStrand. Now, I think most of the people in the room have been attending some of our sessions for over the last few years. I won't go into a lot of detail on OneStrand, particularly as, of course, you will have seen the notifications over the last 4 weeks that Absolute Data Group and OneStrand, who are the companies part of the R4i brand, have of course been acquired by Pennant in the UK. So next month we will be expecting that these PowerPoints will change, and we will no longer be displaying the OneStrand brand, but instead we'll be displaying the new Pennant brand. But the focus of today is on R4i Writer. It is one of our products. The other core products in the family are the Common Source Database, of course, the CSDB. Writer is the big one we'll be focusing on today. We, of course, have our R4i Viewer, which is our Windows version of our IATP Viewer, which is, of course, royalty-free. We also have an Android and a iOS version of our Viewer, which is also free to distribute. Our R4i Binder tool, which is our tool for drag and drop creation of manuals. They can be from S1000D content or any HTML or XML content. And our Illustrated Parts tool, or IPD Manager, which allows you to automatically generate hundreds of IPD data modules in just a few minutes from your engineering, PLM databases or spreadsheets and images. And the products that we have listed here are also available under our hosted platform, which of course is on shop.onestrand.com. So today's focus, though, is of course on R4i Writer and the new release version 3 that is due to come out at the end of next week. We're about to put it up on the portal. And to present version 3 to us is Ms. Rita Nye. Good afternoon, Rita.
Hey, Tammy.
And
sorry.
You're right, all good. And Rita, of course, has been a consultant with ADG and OneStrand for over 15 years now, with a particular focus on HTML and XML publishing systems. She has specialised very much so in S1000D and dynamic database publishing programs with delivery to web and complex print, which she is quite well known for with her faux development. Rita is a trainer not only on the generic topic of S1000D subjects, but also in the R4i product suite. And of course she trains in our XML tools, including R4i Writer, Arbor Text Editor and Adobe FrameMaker. The last piece, of course, her development, which I mentioned a little earlier. She does do XSLT development and, of course, faux development for those PDF publications that some of our customers still expect today. So on that note, Rita, I am going to hand over to you on what is new today.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Tammy. So let's just change controls and we'll see if this all works out. Oh, that'll teach me to not click onto the drop down correctly.
There you go. You have the con and I can see your screen.
Excellent. Okay, so actually, believe it or not, this is a big release. There's lots of functionality that we've now implemented into R4i Writer. And the ones that I really wanted to focus on are the ones that we've got listed here. These are ones that people have been asking for and identifying that we need or have a function for. So obviously the first one is we've got our STE support, so Simplified Technical English. So it allows us to be able to additionally help control our documentation exactly how we would normally go through. Obviously, as we know, with issue 4 and above, we couldn't keep our change markup inside our data modules. So what we've done is we've now implemented a clear change markup function. So instead of you having to manually go through and delete all that change markup, we're now giving you the option just to be able to click a button. Obviously, it's to do it with caution, but it's there to come through. Now, for anybody who was at the S1000D conference, we did announce at that point in time we already had support for issue 5. So this is the formal release of that support for issue 5. So we do have that capability now in this version of R4i Writer. The next one is a lot of our customers have been asking us for floating licenses. So instead of, up until now, we've had our fixed licensing, which means each license is locked onto a computer and it would go through that process of verifying that information. What we have done is we have been able to provide now floating licenses inside R4i Writer. So for those of you who didn't see our floating license webinar, if you can jump up onto our support, up onto our portal and request access to that, you'll see how we go through and actually support that. But it's now available with R4i Writer. The next new function that came through with R4i Writer is, as we know, if we're using our warning and caution refs functionality inside our data modules, we have to then actually populate those IDs inside the content. So up until now, you've literally had to copy and paste that information through. So after a bit of discussion in-house, we've been able to get it to the point now, similar to what we do with the insertion of IDs, where it automatically populates and gives you a suggested ID. We can now actually populate the IDs for warning and caution refs. So it does make authoring that little bit easier for us to be able to see that information. The next one that we looked at was the function where we've got a data module reference or a TechPub reference that we know where it is, but we may not physically be able to locate it inside the CSDB for whatever reason, and we don't want to go through and do the search function. So what we've done is we've allowed this function whereby you can find a data module reference in another source document, copy that, and paste it into your current document. What that will allow us to do then is obviously we need to get that refs block updated to reflect that information. So the PARS referencing is now that feature that allows us to be able to do that. So again, it's making sure that we're still compliant with the requirements of S1000D. Okay, the second last one that we've really introduced into it, obviously it's in line with your change markup function, is the reason for update. So inside your ID status block, obviously we can put in our reason for update and we can put an ID against that. Then once you go into your content, you can put a reason for update ID ref into the documentation. Similar to what we've done with our warnings and cautions, it now gives us that option to be able to automatically populate that information. So we've done that. And the last thing that we've done is we've got some additional support for our table editor. Everyone loves our table editor. They really do find that it's a nice, easy way for us to be able to manage our content. But of course, what's happening is because we're making it so easy and so simple for you to be able to manage your tables, people have been veering out into other other criteria. So things such as putting in warnings, cautions, notes, references. So what we've had to do is we've had to expand our table editor to be able to support some of that functionality. So we've literally had to go through and identify what other features do we need to consider with that, because obviously when we launch our table editor, if you're not going through and just doing straight paras of content and you then save it, what was happening is you could lose some of that data, and obviously we don't want that to occur. So we've had to expand all of that criteria for our table editor. So that's the sort of just the process of what we're going to be looking at when we get into looking at the actual product. So Tammy, what I'd like to do is, based on just my little bit of a summarization that I've done so far, can we actually get some feedback from our attendees in terms of which one of these tools is the one that they're possibly interested in the most? So if you could launch a poll for me, please.
Yep, that poll is up.
Excellent. Now we have made the option there for all, so that's fine. You can select all, but if we can just get a little bit of a feedback in terms of what people's interests are, just so that we can get a gauge for where you're heading. And if you do have all, just give us any other specific information inside your question panel.
Yep, so they can vote reader, STE, issue 5 support, floating license support, clearing change markup, table editor, which one is most important to them. And otherwise, like you said, if really all of those things are very important to them, then just type the word all in the question panel and we'll basically know that that's what you're looking for. It'll just allow us to also emphasise as we go through the demonstration where we want to put a fair bit of emphasis and go into detail on, because it's of more interest to the audience. So
absolutely,
we haven't got all the votes in yet, but so far there's a clear split between STE and clear change markup as being most important. So
okay.
I'm not surprised, but all the votes are not in yet. As mentioned, if you are wanting to focus on all those features in detail, then please type all into your question panel. So let me just see if we've got any questions up yet. Just break out that panel while we're waiting for the last votes. Okay, so I think we might leave it at that, Rita. So we'll assume we've got about a third of the people in the room are wanting STE support, a third are wanting clear change markup, and a third are wanting all. So, so definitely STE and change markup are the big focus areas.
Okay, fantastic.
Just close that down for you. Okay.
Excellent. Okay, so effectively what it means now is I'm going to actually jump into the demonstration so that you can actually see how it all works inside Writer. So let me just bring up R4i Writer. Okay, first pre-warning that I have to say, which caused me a little bit of contention, was first of all the programmers have added a new toolbar and they rearranged just about everything in the document tools section. I had to hunt and find. So first of all, what we've done is we have split out our options toolbar. So now we have an appearance and a settings section. So I'll just deviate a little bit. So the appearance section, what we've done with that is everything to do with the appearance of your content inside R4i Writer is now under the appearance toolbar.
Okay, because that was pretty popular, wasn't it, Rita, with people wanting to have certain font sizes and stuff as they're authoring, so that's been pretty popular.
Absolutely, and one of the enhancement requests we did get was, as you know, when you've got a data module checked out, there's the vertical line that shows you your indentation level, and we had a couple different customers report that they'd like to be able to increase the colour of that vertical line. So we have had a new implementation of that. So if I go to check out a data module with my lazy double-click function, we can see here that that vertical line is a little bit more pronounced. So we do now have that function available so they can control it. And of course, we have also gone in and provided a restore defaults option as well. So if someone has totally destroyed their environment and they really want to go back to the defaults, they can literally just click on restore defaults and that will do that process. Now our settings toolbar, this is where we start to see some of the new functions that are available. And the first one I'm going to look at is our STE side of it. So what we have with that, so STE, as we know, Simplified Technical English, there's the STE base dictionary, which is all of your approved and non-approved words as per the STE specification. And so what we've done is we've grabbed all of those words and we've put those into a base dictionary. So you can see here on my toolbar I have my dictionary section, and if I click onto my drop down I can actually have multiple dictionaries. So because I'm working with the R4i Writer Pro license, not only can I see my options of dictionaries that I'm working with, I also have the ability to be able to add a new dictionary as well. So this is where we can start to create our own customized dictionaries that are purely specifically for technical nouns, technical verbs that are unique to a project. Because as we know from a project's perspective, there's a range of different words or phrases that you would always use that may not necessarily be compliant to STE. So by being able to build our own dictionaries, it means that everybody inside R4i Writer will be able to have that base STE dictionary, which of course is separate to our normal spell check dictionary. So they're two very separate things.
So Rita, can I just dig into that a little bit? So the base dictionary is the STE dictionary, as it's known from the specification.
Yes.
And and let's say I'm a component manufacturer and I manufacture things for civilian programs. So let's say one of the big aircraft mainframe manufacturers, and then I might also do some defence programs, and both of those have some very specific, as you said, technical terms that might be used. So while I'm authoring, if let's say I was working on my defence program, I would shift to my defence dictionary that's been supplied to me, my list of words, and when I'm using that, it's also still using the base as well. Is that right? Is that a bit like Brex checking where you kind of have the concept of layered Brex? Yep. Okay.
Yes. So obviously with that process, it's going to do the base dictionary check first, and then it's going to do your custom dictionary, because there might be words that's in the base dictionary that for your project is actually approved. So you can override the base dictionary with your own custom.
Okay, right, excellent. So it's that second tier on top of the base level. Then we've got some very specific things for our program. And then I would save that document, shut it down. I could open a completely different document and I can switch my dictionaries for that particular document. Is that right?
Correct. You've got it. So as a tech writer, you would come into your settings and you would choose which dictionary you want to use.
Yep.
And until you have changed that dictionary, every document that you check out and start working with, whatever is the dictionary that you've got selected at the moment, that's going to be the one that it's going to do the validation against.
Perfect. Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
So, yeah. And so we can easily select the doco and then we can go through. Obviously, with that, we also have a delete function, because there's going to be instances where, for whatever reason, maybe that particular prime, you no longer need to go through and write documentation for that, then you could remove that dictionary as well. So you do have that capability of being able to control which dictionaries are available, but we've set it up so that you can actually have multiple dictionaries inside the one environment. Now, obviously, all of these dictionaries are stored inside the CSDB. So once one person has created that dictionary database, let's say, so that dictionary file, it's then possible for you to go through and have everybody access that dictionary. So it's not running locally on each individual machine. It is globally stored inside the CSDB.
Okay, so and just like you said, because you're a pro user, so you've got the top layer of R4i Writer, you have the ability to be able to add those dictionaries, where the average
Correct.
standard license, who is just authoring, they will see them available, but they don't get to add them or remove them.
Correct, and they can't modify them, they can't do anything with that.
Excellent.
So the pro writers, the administrators of the environment, they'll get to manage the dictionaries, and then from there, you can then go through from there. So if I wanted to add a dictionary, so at the moment you can see I've got base, doco, and sample. Let's say I need another dictionary. I can simply come onto my new. I can then give it a name. Let's just call it test. And I've obviously got to put at least one word into it, so, or one technical noun, technical verb, whatever we're doing with that. So let's say I'm going to call it auto-populate. I can then choose what's the parts of speech. I'm going to say, let's put it as a verb. Is it approved or not? I'm going to say yes. I can then put in the descriptive meaning about that word.
Mm-hmm. So what does auto-populate really mean? Yep.
And then I can put in what is the approved way that it's got to be typed. So I could say that auto-populate can't ever start at a starting point in the sentence.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got to be inside. So I can always say that it's got to be in uppercase. And then I can put in an unapproved word method.
Oh, okay, right. So in this particular case, it's always got to be in lowercase, because like I said, it's in the middle of a sentence, for instance.
Yeah.
So,
but
okay, so this is awesome. So not only, can you just select and make available via the CSDB that you're adding dictionaries, but we're actually giving you an interface to add them.
Correct. And
Nice.
obviously then if I click onto my my little tick down here, there's my word added in. I could then go in and add my next word. So I can start to build this dictionary with as many words as I need. And once I'm finished with that, I just go save. And it'll pop up to say, hey, do you want to set this one as the new dictionary? So because I've been updating and creating this, if I say yes to this, because at the moment I'm set to doco, if I say yes, it changes to test. So now it knows I'm in the test project.
Yep.
I can manage that content. So I can go through and have as many dictionaries as I need. Obviously, I'm being a little bit lazy here by only putting a couple words into each dictionary, but it's to give the scenario of what's happening.
Absolutely.
Okay. And obviously, if it was a project that didn't have a custom dictionary and you felt that you didn't need a custom dictionary, you've still got your base dictionary. So you can just work with the base dictionary.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got flexibility with all of this. Okay. Just a couple things that I want to point out whilst we're on the settings toolbar, just so that they know what's happening. First one is this one here, which is our auto load images. What we found is that some customers, they've got lots of graphics inside their documents. So what we've done is we've enabled the function that with Writer up until now, if you go to check out a data module, and you can see here that I've got 3 illustrations inside this document. By having that checkout option enabled, so it's got the gold background, when I check out a data module, I'm checking out the data module, but I'm also writing the illustrations down onto my local drive. So we've had situations where customers reported that, it's taking a long time for files to be checked out because they might have, 100, 150, 200 graphics in that data module. It's a pretty big data module, but hey, they can do it. So what we've done is we've made the option now that you can choose, do you want to check out or grab copies of the illustrations at checkout point? And because, of course, whilst you're authoring content, you're now also going to insert references to other illustrations. We can also grab a copy when we insert a reference. The thing we need to be aware of that one is that if we're using the illustration during a reference, if we don't have this function enabled, the interrogation that we do with the illustration for all the hotspot information, we're not going to be able to retrieve that. So they're going to have to manually populate the hotspot information, but it's a choice for them as to whether or not they want to utilize these. So that's what we've been able to do with the auto loading of images as we're either checking out or inserting.
And I think for the customers that have got a lot of images, they've been turning off that they automatically want to have them on checkout, but they have absolutely, like you said, left it on for when they're referencing, because they want to actually see, what they're working with as they go along. And like you said, if you also have hotspots, it's important so that you can get all the hotspot info load so that you can use that as part of your the data that you're writing about. So that's certainly the, not checking out automatically, but certainly checking out when you're adding new images is definitely a huge benefit for those that have got hundreds of images in a data module. And that's where we saw some lag for sure.
Absolutely. There is one benefit. If you don't have these enabled, when you do the checkout of a data module, in your figures and multimedia panel, you'll actually get a download option. So you can see here the little download icon that's currently disabled because I've downloaded them. But you can either download all, or you can just say, I want to download one of them. So if you want to do some investigations with it, you do get other options to be able to see that information. So instead of downloading hundreds of illustrations, if there's just one that you need to be able to look at, then we do provide that option for you.
Beautiful.
Okay. Now, of course, we've had this backup on save function for quite a while. And any of you who have attended training, I will quite happily admit that at some point in time, R4i Writer will crash on you. We try as much as possible to try and find bugs. But if Writer does crash, then what we want to be able to do is be able to restore back to that backup file. So now we've also got an open backup function. So with this, what they can do is click on that, navigate to the location where the backup files are located, and that will then allow us to select the backup file and work with it. So we have provided that function as well. So that's how we can then go through and manage our content. So it's just a little bit of extra function for us. As I said, we do now support issue 5. So if you go to the S1000D toolbar, you will see that issue 5 is now listed there, which means, of course, that irrespective of what versions you have enabled on that S1000D tab, if you've got issue 5 content installed or set inside your CSDB, you can obviously check it out. But from the new perspective, it does give us the list of all of the schemas that we support for issue 5. So that's our issue 5 side of it. So again, it's literally being able to identify what we need. Now, I'm going to pick on this particular data module for most of the process that we're going through with this. So the first one I want to be able to look at is I'm going to continue on the STE side of it, since everyone was really focused on that one. And with this, I'm not going to make any changes at this point in time. I'm literally just going to do an STE check. So we can see down here on our document errors that we've got 7 errors, of which they're all spelling errors that are inside the document. So that's the only thing that we've got at this point in time. And at this stage, we would then go through and we would want to make any updates that we need to do. And we're then going to go through and say, okay, I need to do a Brex check. And I also need to do an STE check. So remembering from a Brex validation perspective, it's going to validate against the Brex module that we've referenced. And if it's a layered Brex, we can then do that. That's no problems at all. So that's all fine. As I said, the programmers have moved everything. And when I opened up R4i Writer, I literally had to go, oh, where is everything now? So you'll see here, this particular one is now your Brex check. So it has moved to a new location. it still does exactly the same thing that it was doing previously. There's nothing different about it. It's just that the icon has actually physically moved. So just be aware of that. But here is our STE check. Now remembering on my settings toolbar, I have set it to the base dictionary. So now if I click on to my STE check and hoping that it all behaves itself, obviously it's got to go through and start to dig into all of the criteria of our document. And the bigger the document, the longer it's going to take for this STE process to go through. But it's usually, fairly efficiently created. And I'm hoping it's all going to behave itself. It's always the joys of live demonstrations. There we go. Okay, so my errors have now gone from 7 to 193,
Ugh.
which is a slight problem.
Jeez, this is a very well written data module you've got here, Rita. Is this one of the bike ones, right?
Yeah, it's the bike one with all of my extra play content inside it. So yeah, it's terrible.
Okay,
but
it's deliberately badly written.
Okay, so now that I've run the STE, you can see that I've now got 186 STE errors. And with this, it shows us what the details are. Now, because some of that information might be quite extensive, it's a little bit difficult to be able to read it inside here. So what we can do is we can actually click onto the Locate in Document, and it will actually take us to where it is. And you can see that it's highlighted it. And when I point to it, it'll actually tell me what rule is it. And then it'll go through and give me all of the information about what it is, what's the message, so what's the approved method of description, and what's the unapproved example. So this is where we can start to see that information.
Nice.
So this is literally coming straight from the dictionaries, and you're now seeing that information. So we can go through and you can see we've got lots of them. So bearing in mind, apart from the word bolt, this sentence is stock standard S1000D. So there's nothing in this particular first sentence that I've actually changed. And we can see that completely is unapproved, prevent is unapproved, and thus.
Yeah, they are vague words, right? They are not allowed. Absolutely.
So this is where, obviously, at this point in time, the tech writer needs to put their tech writing hat on and work out how they're going to reword this sentence to make it actually correct. Bearing in mind, you're never going to get 100% STE compliance. You're just not going to do it.
Yeah, but they're pretty obvious ones just in that one paragraph, aren't they? I mean, using a term like completely, what does that mean? Like that's, it's too vague.
Absolutely. So this is where the STE tool starts to help you. So it's going to give you the guidance and the understanding on what have you written and how can we then go through and start to fix it up.
So can I have a look at completely there, Rita? So they, I gather there's a word suggestion, right? Yeah, fully. Use approved word.
Yep.
So fully open as opposed to completely open. There you go.
Correct. So yeah, so as I said, these are, because I'm using the base dictionary, I'm not using any of the custom dictionaries. This is stock standard STE dictionary terminology. So it's literally looking at that content and identifying what has changed.
The rules. Yep, excellent.
Yep, and what doesn't comply. So that's where we get our STE support. So as a tech writer, I get a little bit of an interface to be able to identify it, and we get the visual indicator. So as we start to scroll through, we can then look at some of that content, or we can literally do the navigation. So we can go through and say, okay, what's that next one? So again, it's allowing us to find all of the content and then start to think about it.
Yeah.
Because obviously the tech writer is...
And I guess, Rita, one of the sort of things that would probably normally happen is as you're authoring, so if I'm writing a paragraph and it's quite a detailed one like that, I can just run my STE check immediately and it will pick up those 3 words straight away that I shouldn't have used. And I can fix them, save my document, continue on. So that it's not the sort of thing that you generally want to save to the end, right, of when you're ready to do a data delivery to a customer, I better go do an STE check on all my data modules. That's quite cumbersome. It's the sort of thing that you want to be continually, validating your schemas, validating your brexes, doing spell checks and doing STE checks constantly on your documents as you're working, right?
Absolutely. Obviously, with R4i Writer, the schema validation is done automatically for you, so you don't need to really think about it. And it looks at your language element inside your data module to identify what
language you're working
spelling you're using in terms of spelling, as in actual physical spelling. So things such as if it's set to US English, then organisation with a Z is required, compared to if it was Australian English, organisation with an S would be required.
Yeah.
So it automatically does that one. Your Brex check, you can do that at any point in time. There's no restrictions at all. And STE, absolutely. I would go through, if I was writing stocks from the start, each time I did a batch of documentation on that data module, I'd do an STE check at that point in time to make sure that I've got all the correct information.
Perfect. Excellent.
Okay. Now, you will have noticed, or possibly not, but in this particular data module, I have populated my warning and caution refs block. Now, as we know, descriptive content wouldn't normally have warnings and cautions, but for this particular example, so I don't have to switch around to different data modules, I have broken the golden rule and I have put warning and cautions into this document. So if I was going to add some content, so let's say at this particular level para, I wanted to add a warning. If I was doing it the stock standard traditional way, I would put my cursor after the closing tag of the title, and you can see I've got warning, caution, and note available. But as we know, with version 4 and above, what they did was they allowed you to put the attribute on. So what you would do is you'd actually come into the level para element and you would want to select the attribute. So if I press my space bar, my list of attributes comes through, and if I select warning refs, and it then gives me the list of the IDs that are already available inside that data module. So I can then select which one it is, and if I wanted the additional one, if I press my space bar again, I can then select my second one. So I can go through and populate all of my warning and caution ref IDs by simply inserting the attribute and then pressing the space bar to give me the list of attributes that are available. Obviously, previously, we literally had to highlight the ID up here, copy it, and then go into the warning refs and paste it. And which of course meant, A, I'm doing something manual, which means that there's a high probability that I might get the wrong information, and it's just slower. So this is going to make that authoring process that little bit faster. So that's our warning and caution ref IDs. Now, as we know, when we start looking at our documents, let's just start collapsing some content here so I can actually show what's happening. We've got our reason for update. Now, up until now, you would simply come in and you would insert your reason for update, and you would insert your simple para, and that would be your reason for update. So why are we updating this particular data module? And we can then set an ID. So we can either allow Writer to give you the prompt for the reason for update, and as per the S1000D specification, it does have a predefined format for those reason for updates. So we can use that, or we can type our own, whichever one is the preference for what you want to do. So I can then select that reason for update. And let's say here I needed to add a para of content at the beginning of this section here. So we can get that information in, and obviously then I can come into my para element and put in my reason for update IDs attribute. Oh, I've just managed to break it. Excellent. It should have prompted me with my ID. Aren't we lucky we're not actually releasing today? Okay, I'll test that one, but it should be prompting you with your RFUs so that it's automatically giving you that choice. So that's what it will be doing once it's officially released. And also, if we were putting change markup on here, I can then put my change mark equals 1 because I want it to give a change indicator. And if I then put in my change type, and let's say it's an add, so I've been able to add my change markup into my document. If this was then, let's jump forward. Hey, we've updated, this has been issued to the customer. We now want to go through and clear all of that change markup. So before we start to go through and make the next round of changes, we want to clear all of that change markup. So with that, we have our clear change here on our toolbar. And if I select that, okay, it also comes up with a little prompt. And it says, would you like to remove the reason for update markup from the current data module? Now, unfortunately, the S1000D specification is not totally clear on what's required when we do a clear change markup. And the different customers that I spoke to get some feedback on what we should or shouldn't do, they ended up basically indicating two options. Option number one is that you would go through and you clear all of the change markups, so the change mark and the change type, but you'd keep the RFUs. That was option number one. Option number two was no, you take out the change markup. That means you take out the reason for update, the change mark, and the change type. Right. So I've now got two ends of the spectrum that didn't actually correlate. So what we've done instead, we've gone, okay, we're going to make it the user's, the project's choice. So from a project's perspective, you would make the decision, do we clear the reason for update information when we go through and do a clear change markup? If you say yes, then not only is the change markup going to be removed, but also the reason for update.
Nice,
if you say
choice.
No,
yep,
it's a choice. So if I say yes to this, and bang, there we go. So if we come down into our reason for update, you can see all of the reason for updates have been cleared. And if we come down into our content where I added that information, it's also been removed from the para element. So it's nice, simple, and easy.
Excellent.
So,
very handy. I'm sure customers are going to love that one.
Absolutely. Okay, the next one was our parsing reference function. So with this, what we've done is we have gone through and let's say in this particular data module, I'm just going to turn on the quick view. I know there's a reference that I can use. This is the one where I know it is. I just can't find it inside my document. So instead of that, I'm literally going to come through and here's my DM ref. I want that DM ref. So instead of me looking around and trying to find where it is actually physically inside my database, I'm going to highlight my DM ref here and just do a copy. And I'll just turn my quick view off and change my screen again just so that you can see. And what we would do is we'd come down here and let's just put in a para. So I put in my text and then I just go Control V. So it's pasted that reference in, but of course what it hasn't done is it hasn't updated my refs block. So with this, if I was doing it previously, I'd have to then go into my refs block and put the same information in. So instead of doing that, what I can do is I can come up here to my PARS references and click onto that. And what it will do is it will then update that refs block. And there's that data module now added. So it's just, if I have to do it the manual way to get that data module reference in, I can at least get my refs block to also be updated with the same information. So it's just to be able to help with that information. Okay, table editor. Here we go.
The last one.
So let's see if this table will load for me. Now, as we know, the table editor, we've had it for quite a while. There's nothing super duper special or new about the table editor in terms of globally its functionality. But what we've done is we've gone through and we've made a few little extra features inside it. So by looking at this, we can't see anything that's really dramatic. But if I put my cursor into a cell, what it does is it actually shows you the tagging that's there. So we can then go through and actually see the physical tagging that is available so that we know exactly where we are. And if we then needed to add some extra content, we know where to correctly place our information inside the cell to then be able to go and do a save. And obviously, if we do that, we can see that then it gets replicated into our document. So this is very much, let's go through this process of being able to add content. And if we click into each cell, you'll actually see that we automatically put in the tagging for you so that we know exactly where everything is. What this does is it allows us to make sure that we can get consistency. So if there was a ref DM inside here, or a DM ref, I should use the right term for the version that I'm working with, it means that I can actually see that DM ref markup correctly and it doesn't have any line breaks or para breaks in terms of our content. So the table editor has had, it doesn't look like much, but it's actually had quite a bit of work put into it to get all of this functionality. And we can see here, we've got a title.
So, Rita, so basically what we found was 90% of the customers literally did tables that were kind of like tab type, which was really great. Like you said, the table editor interface, you literally, as you're seeing it here with no tags, you could do that. And of course, the differences too between V3 and below and V4 and above, in the past versions, you didn't actually have the option to have all this markup, right? You couldn't put warnings and cautions and paras and steps and all of that stuff, could you, in a table cell?
Well, you could put it in, but it could be going into the entry element, whereas in version 4 and above, to put straight text into a cell, it had to be inside a para tag.
Yep.
So we had to formulate. So
allow for all the different versions, how you can mark up, and then, of course, like you said, not trip across yourself. For the average customer, they just tab type. But as soon as we start getting, I want to add beyond that paragraph in there, you have to make sure they can see that tagging. Otherwise, they could break their structure. So it gives them the option to structure the table in the cells and the entries how they want, or to that particular specification, while actually seeing what's going on. And we didn't want to create a lot of noise, right? So as you can see, Rita has, when she clicks in a cell, it shows you the markup just for that cell. One of the things we originally did was, okay, allow people to just turn tags on the table, but it kind of loses all of its formatting. It gets really loud, really noisy, really fast in a cell if you've got a lot of content. So well, across the entire table. So just showing me the markup for where I'm sitting and where I'm about to edit seemed like the best approach. And so all the markup is always there in the table in the background now. So we're doing all the smarts for you, but you don't have to see it until you click in the cell. But of course, over on the left in the tag view, you can see it all the time as well still. So it was trying to find that fine line and balance between making sure you don't do any damage to the markup that's required in a cell while making it still very usable.
Correct. So it took a lot of effort, a lot of programming time for the guys and the programmers and developers and QA to actually get this to all work for us. But it's now come to a point. One of the other things that we had with that was that if there was a title on a table, when you launched the table editor and made changes and then saved it, you actually lost the table title. So I'd literally got to a point where I would copy the title element and make my document structurally invalid, update the table, make the changes in the editor, save it, and then move my title element back to its correct position. So it was a nasty workaround for us, but it worked for me. Whereas now you can see if I make any changes here in my editor, my title is always maintained. So again, it's just getting consistency of documentation so that no one has loss of data. So we have that function for you. So that's the sort of process that we can have. So it doesn't look like much, but there's a lot of technology actually happening behind that table editor to do the functions that we're now looking at and being able to maintain the elements that have been inserted into the documentation.
Yeah, well, just keeping a pretty view. Yep, absolutely.
Correct.
Excellent.
So they're the sorts of things that we've had to go through, and you can see there's quite a lot. But, yeah, it looks really, really good, and it's going to be a lot of help to a lot of our end users.
Yes, a lot of this was feedback from the customer based on expectations, and as they're, like you said, their documents are getting bigger, they're getting more complex, they're running a lot of different versions, so there's it's all based on a round of feedback this time, and continues to make the product very usable. So we're very excited to be releasing version 3 of R4i Writer in the next week or so, which is extremely exciting. So,
absolutely.
On that note,
now it's open to anybody with questions so that we can have any other further discussion. And while we're waiting for that, just some extra information on our STE configuration. So these are some of the rules that have currently been implemented into our STE plugin.
Okay, thanks, Rita. So as Rita mentioned, we finished the V3 demonstration to highlight the core stuff, and as she's mentioned, there are some additional items and movements in screens, so certainly worthy to check out the release notes, which hopefully the release and its notes will all be available end of next week. So we are targeting to have the V3 out before the end of the month, or just at the end of the month. So, and the STE, the details about specifically what we're checking for with Simplified Technical English has been a request. So we thought while everyone comes up with questions that they might have, we can, of course, let you have a little look-see at that list. This list will be part of the detailing documentation, obviously, in the release. And, of course, this session has been recorded, so if you want to come back and look at this list as well, that's available in the recording. So on that note, if there are no questions from the audience today, Rita, we will leave it there. We look forward to seeing you all at our next webinar. I'm not quite sure what the topic has been chosen. It might be IPB or another one, but I do know that you will have the pleasure of meeting Greg Albright, our consultant out of North America. So he will be running a session with Rita next month. So that will free me up while the two consultants in the room get to have a chat instead. So
that's the one.
Yep. So everyone will get to meet Greg as well. So thank you for spending your time with us this evening, this afternoon or this morning, depending on where you've joined from. And we look forward to seeing you in the next session. Thank you very much, Rita. Thank you, everyone.